watch me fly. Put on your cape,
All right, everyone, we are live with Warrior Woman in Business, episode 61. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for today's guest. It's going to be a meeting of the minds. Julie, I've been waiting to speak with you forever. So I really am very excited and appreciative that you agreed to be on Warrior Women in Business today. So before I get into today's guest, Julie Roehm, who is what I call a Warrior Woman in Global Marketing. From a marketer, to me, that's a big accomplishment. I want to talk about Warrior Women in Business for those of you that don't know Warrior Women in Business and don't know our mission and don't know me. So Warrior Women in Business is actually a division of my main company, JS Media, which has been a branding and digital marketing agency since 2006 with the intention and mission of helping underserved markets by providing concierge digital marketing services. We support executives, artists, and women in business. And Warrior Women in Business is all about supporting women in business, primarily by bringing leaders like Julie on to generously provide their background and their advice and support for women in business. So I was going to say, so Julie Roehm is a decorated dynamic leader in marketing. And she's been recognized not only for her work in marketing, but also in customer experience. Julie has a very strong background in the automotive industry, and she supports women in STEM, and you're going to talk about that today, correct? She has numerous achievements, including the Advertising Hall of Achievement, the Automotive Hall of Fame, Brand Week's Marketer of the Year, and Distinguished Alumni Award from her alma mater, the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And in that, just a major achievement for those of you that know the Booth School of Business. She's metrics fueled. We talked about that a little bit pre-show, how important it is in marketing to understand metrics, to make decisions. And for women, female entrepreneurs that are looking to really grow their careers, especially in marketing, what we're talking about today, it's important that we get into that conversation and what that looks like, especially with all the numbers that are being thrown at us every second, right? Absolutely. So that's an important thing. She got her foundation and bachelor's in civil engineering from Purdue. And Julie really is, what I call a forerunner in women getting into more male-dominated industries, especially automotive, early on. And not only becoming successful, but I applaud you for also helping other women. And that's a big thing that a lot of women, a lot of leaders, it's not that they don't want to do it. It's that a lot of times that they don't have the time and energy to do it. So I want to talk about that today. And sorry for me coughing and almost dying on my podcast, but I want to get right into this. So yeah, we're going to talk to Julie all about that today. And one thing I'd like to mention before we get into the questions is that I was really lucky to have one of my previous guests on, Phyllis Wilson, who was a U.S. Army general, Julie, for 37 years on my podcast. I mean, I was like in tears. So she runs the Women's Military Memorial in Arlington, Virginia, and I keep emphasizing to women that you should go visit. I'm actually going down there in a couple of weeks to visit. We made a special Warrior Women in Military. We have a fashion line t-shirt, and we're looking to raise money because it helps to support the awareness of the women that serve in the U.S. military and support us, which I could not believe 3 million women have served in the U.S. military since the Revolutionary War. So if you haven't checked out the shirt, you don't know what that is, you should check it out. I'm really excited to go down. So that being said, and that to me is a warrior woman. So
no doubt. The ultimate, the epitome of it, right? No doubt.
Yeah, I couldn't believe she said yes. I was like, yes. Right. But anyway, all right, so let's get into this. So let's talk about one of the things, obviously, I want to pick your brain on is what it means to lead global marketing. I know, I mean, I have 5 employees. You're at a company that has 10,000. I have no idea how you do it. So what does it mean to lead global marketing? What are the essentials of being successful in a very visible role? And then share with us a little bit about that new role and about that company, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So Convergint is a company I've only been at for a couple of months, and it's a totally new industry for me. So, a lot of marketers they pick a lane. They pick retail, they pick something very specific in B2B software, or whatever it might be. And I've sort of done the path less taken and kind of zipped around a little bit. So
Mhm.
this industry is all about integrating. Let me just say, I think it's about making the world a safer place, really through a commercial lens. So when you think about companies and they're thinking when they have to, move into a new building, when they're opening new facilities, they're thinking about all the things that make that environment safe. So things from a card reader to know who's getting in the building, to
Mm.
cameras that are installed, to fire in alarms, that ensure personal safety, to cybersecurity that ensures digital safety. So you think about the physical and the digital world, and we're this bridge that connects these, and we come into customers who have problems like that, and many others. I'm super simplifying,
Mhm.
and we hear what their issues are, and we design solutions, and we say, look, we don't sell software, we don't sell camera, we don't sell any of this stuff. What we sell is the ability to create designs for your solutions, to have partnerships with really important partners around the world that do make that software, that do make those physical assets. And we, based on your needs, go out and we source those and we put them together, and we will install all of it because our technicians become
Mm.
certified with all those partners' equipment and software, and we'll then integrate it to make it easy for our customers then to be able to have a monitoring system, to be able to see the data, to understand what's happening with that safety environment. So that's really what we do. So it's a new industry for me, as you've noted, and people are I've worked in lots, from automotive, which I spent a great deal of time in, whether it was
Yeah.
on the OEM side or the collision side, which was a lot less sexy, but equally as fun, to things like retail, big retail, a couple of those in my path, a lot of PE firms, a lot of startups in technology, really the whole gamut. And I think the common thread that you asked about, which is, that how do you lead in a global environment? Um, Companies like this with 10,000 employees, or when I was at SAP with
Oh,
75,000
yeah. Oh my
colleagues,
gosh. Yeah.
huge. And, the role of, in my opinion, this may be an opinion of one, but the role of global marketing is to be an enabler to the business, not to create a kingdom or a fiefdom. I like to pride myself on not having a massive staff, but
Mm.
instead, really understanding what are the core elements that our colleagues around the world need in order to drive business and be successful for their customer. We have a saying here of, one of our primary goal is to be our customer's best service provider. And so
Yes,
for
I
us,
couldn't agree with you
it's
on that more.
what can we do to make that better?
Yeah.
Like, is it better communications, better PR? Is it, events? Is it digital assets? How do we help? Because we don't really make anything. We actually create the solutions. How do we
Interesting.
bring our partners involved to be able to illustrate the story through the voice of our customer? We're big into the understanding of customer journeys and the customer experience. And what does that look like so other customers can see themselves through the lens of another customer that looks a lot like them? So for me, global marketing and managing it that way is really having people in market. It's important to have the voice of the customer, which is both, from a marketer standpoint, is both your internal customer as well as your external customer. What does
Absolutely.
that look like, that intersection? And then how do you build strategies, and how do you then leverage and create tools that can be used around the world? So instead of creating something unique everywhere you go,
Yes,
how do
modeling.
you find, that great 80/20 rule? How do you find that 80% that allows everybody around the world to lean in, get almost all the way there, and then add that special sauce that makes it local, that makes it personal to that customer or that particular industry that they're trying to serve? So that's kind of how I think about it. And so it requires a ton of collaboration and
Yes.
really good internal communication, and really good tools within our own four walls that we can actually then use to get out there. And speaking of the four walls, as the team will know, I've been here 2 months. I've already been to, Bucharest, Romania, and Amsterdam, and London, and
Wow.
Bangkok, and a bunch of US cities,
Mm.
because the answers are rarely inside your four walls, they are with your colleagues and with your customers. And so there's nothing more important than spending time there. And that's where the illumination and the innovation comes from.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Well,
Yeah.
it's tremendous. So I wonder, could you tap into the communication a little bit when you're working with your partners and your vendors? How
Yeah.
do you, and this is a new role. First of all, I didn't say congratulations. I was
Oh, well,
joking.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I don't
And by
even
the
know
way,
if I said my name. I'm Jasmine Sandler. But anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about setting communication guidelines when you're going into a large, I mean, I know from a small organization. So for the executives that are listening and watching, when you're going into a larger organization, even if you don't have, like you said, a deep pocket of directs, how are you approaching creating communication guidelines, styles, and you also mentioned global, right? These different countries. So
right.
how do you address that? How do you approach that?
So there's, I mean, look, there's an internal communication, first of all, that we have to have. Like I kicked off this morning, I was on a train and it was a marketing team globally. So it was people from around the world, and you have to pick the right time so that you can manage time. So, somebody's going to be up early and somebody's going to be up late no matter what, but you do the best you
Right.
can. But having those, just, today was a great example. On the meeting, we had our marketing leader in the Middle East. She's based in Dubai, shared
Uh-huh.
the story of this event we've got a booth at, and this new AV technology that she has that's, got holograms and some really cool features that really helps to bring to life and showcase the technology element that we help our customers experience. And just this tool that she had, we had our leader in Latin America lean in, and he was like, wait a second. So wait, did you use a partner for that? Did you use an agency for that? Just the best practice sharing is so key. And what we're working on now here is finding a repository, a knowledge base, one that's AI enabled actually, that allow us to take the best
Nice.
practices that we all have and then learn from those, so that, again, it doesn't necessarily require so many actual head count, living all over the world. It's not about populating the world with our own colleagues. It's about, at least in marketing, we need technicians to do the installs, but from a
Right.
marketing headcount perspective, it's more about how do we become efficient so that we can use technology, which again is what we're about, to be able to transfer this knowledge and this message to allow us to do more and better, greater things for our customers in market. And then with our partners, it's the same. I just stepped out of, I told you, I almost, thank God I had told the team in here that I had this podcast, because I was like, I need it 10 till to, yeah. They're like, Julie, it's 10 till. I was like, oh my God. It's like,
I
I
know.
ran this
I
other conference
understand, believe me.
because we were in this meeting and we were talking about our partners. So some people call them vendors. We think of them as partners because truly, they count on us to be able to go, and when we design these solutions for our customers, that we're thinking about the solutions that they sell, and we're thinking about, gosh, is that the best solution for this customer? Let's be sure we integrate that into this solution. Again, from an agnostic standpoint, but we've got to be really buttoned up and tight with our partners / vendors, to be able to be having our technicians certified, but be able to understand what their needs are. And so when we're thinking about even our own internal events, we happen to have been talking about a sales event that we do annually, and thinking about our partner involvement. What do our partners need to get out of it? What do our colleagues need to get out of it? How do we find that intersection so that
Yeah.
we can create that kind of content and that kind of engagement in a
Mhm.
way that people get excited about coming? How do we make it so that when they go back from there, they're not only energized, but they spread the message to those who didn't attend, but they also feel like, gosh, I got a whole bunch done. I don't need separate additional meetings with that particular partner, for another couple of weeks, because I've already gotten my download. I can hit the ground running. Let's go. The communication, therefore, with kind of that partner vendor out is really key to be continuous and constant and truly be partner oriented. I think that's where, from a marketing perspective, sometimes, we marketers can get a little big for our boots and not realize that, our responsibility is to grow together.
Yeah.
You can't, like, we can't get there without them. They can't get there without us. So how do we work together? And how do you think about that in everything that you do?
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that the longevity of business. I mean, and I'm going to talk about background for a second. I mean, when I started at IBM, that's an incredible story of how communication works well.
Yeah.
It just is. I mean, and I see that, and I try to distill that with smaller businesses, but I think it seems to be the key. I really like that you talked about the knowledge sharing, and now, now we can get into AI,
Yeah.
just the knowledge sharing and, like you talked about equipping your partners with the right information so that they can move forward. So,
Right.
I
And we
mean,
can move forward together. Right.
yeah,
And this, by the way, applies even for small businesses. Again, this
yeah,
is a big company. My last company was a big one, but I was at another private equity firm that we owned 600 collision shops around the country. And so there were a lot of employees. Yes, most of them were technicians literally in the shop who were doing the work. They didn't even have an email, so
yeah,
from us to be able to actually communicate with our own colleague was near impossible. You really had to go through the manager of each of those shops. And thinking through that and thinking through the
yeah,
daisy chain
that's complicated.
there, it's like our insurance carrier was our biggest partner because they're the ones who sent the customer to us. Then we had to serve the actual owner of the vehicle as well. And so you have all these layers of customers, and how do you find that red thread that connects the dots? The insurance carrier wants you to fix the car right the first time and fix it fast so they don't have to pay any more than they have to for the actual repair, but they also don't have to pay extra time for a rental car for that customer to be in. The customer wants to be in their
Yeah,
car faster because it's a huge inconvenience and they want it to be efficient from a pricing standpoint too, so that the insurance will cover it. So you think about all of that and you think, gosh, what can we do from a marketing and an experience perspective? And a lot of it was transparency. Like, let's just make it easier to schedule your appointment, to connect your rental car, to connect your insurance all in one transaction digitally so that you have more knowledge because a lot of that, people are like, I don't know what happens in my car when I drop it off at a collision center. It's like a big black hole and I'm on pins and needles
true.
waiting for somebody to call,
Yeah,
and so this is like that kind of mindset, I
yeah,
think is where success happens on any scale. And you can find solutions. I tend to favor digital solutions in this day and age because they're
yeah,
more efficient, effective, and to your earliest point, provide a ton of data, which gives you insight to allow you to continue
yes,
to optimize.
yeah.
Right. That's for me, that's the name of the game. But that philosophy, what you learned at IBM, what I've learned at big companies, I have been able to apply to much smaller companies as well. And it's actually probably more essential.
Well, I agree. Otherwise, they can't scale.
Right.
So question for you. Now let's get into automotive for a second. Just for a second,
What could be more fun? I love cars. Bring it.
I
Let's.
love cars too and motorcycles. So question about that, about your background. So let's talk, how did you get into the automotive industry? I mean, it's just
Just
really, it's very unique. You don't hear that.
yeah.
Um, and what opportunities also do you think there are for the women that are interested in the automotive industry, in
Yeah.
marketing and in professional, careers?
Yeah. It kind of goes to your STEM question as well. I would say my advice for women is steep yourself in STEM at some point on your developmental career. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be college. And again, it doesn't have to be engineering, right? STEM is science,
Yeah.
technology, engineering, math. Steep yourself in that in some way, especially in this day and age, coding of some sort, just to have some base knowledge and understanding and a minor or some certification you get after the fact. I'm actually on the advisory board for the Digital Marketing Institute. They offer a lot of
Oh,
online
yeah.
classes that you
They're
can
great.
get certifications. Just do that as a personal self-development. Do it for yourself. Because to your question of like, how do you get into automotive? I got into automotive. I had my engineering degree. I was going to Purdue, as you noted. It's civil, but with a focus on environmental engineering. Way before anybody thought environmental. I was like, just post Reagan, where like
Wow.
nobody cared about the environment. They cared
Yeah.
about it was just the
That's
opposite.
right.
So it was a long time ago. But
Yeah.
you go into that, and I knew business experience was going to be the key. So I joined the co-op program. I worked for Bristol Myers Squibb as a co-op every other semester so it extended my undergraduate career to 5 years because of the work experience. And it was essential for me because it taught me that I didn't want to be an engineer. I did it. I did well in it, but I was bored by it, honestly. And that business experience I got led me to being able to participate in the workforce in such a way where I was representing the engineering department in business meetings where we were talking about, in that case, it was baby formula. They were looking to change the label on this Enfamil baby formula product. My job at the time was a package engineer, was the rotation I was in. And
Mhm.
so I had to think about ink jetting the labels with the expiration date and the glue that
Yeah.
held, like that kind of thing.
Mm.
But I got to sit there and listen to why they were changing the label. Like, what was the business strategy behind it? Why were they changing the graphics?
Yeah.
Like, I could hear that entire story and understood, my role. But I love the business strategy component. And that directly led me to say, you know what? I want to go get a business degree. And
Yeah.
so, I was fortunate enough to get into, one of the world's best business programs
Absolutely, it is.
at Chicago. And I thought for sure I'd be a finance major because I was good at math and science. And I was,
Right.
again, bored to tears with all the
Yeah.
finance classes and ended up with marketing and strategy and the rest. And as I was then interviewing for, full-time jobs while I was there, Ford Motor Company came and interviewed with them. And I was just drawn to it because it was global. It was kind of the intersection for me between how a marketer could apply their skills in a kind of a quantitatively based manufacturing oriented industry.
Right, I like manufacturing
Very
myself.
different than like a P&G, which by the way, again, Clorox and
Right.
Kraft, all the rest who were there, which great jobs, but those are Coca-Cola, very marketing focused. I mean,
Yeah,
marketing is the company, largely.
absolutely.
And so I was just really drawn to, maybe I'm drawn to challenges, but marketing wasn't going to play as big a role. We were going to be the redheaded stepchild in the room in a Ford kind of scenario. But I really felt that with my quantitative background, again, engineering, and then probably the most quantitative marketing degree MBA you can get is University of Chicago, very
Yes.
quantitative, is to be able to apply that knowledge in that way of thinking. And it was everything. It was problem solving. It led me, I ventured into digital, I think, before most did. So
Me
in
too.
at Ford, I launched the Ford Focus in the US for the first time in 1999
Oh,
and
wow.
had a
Mm.
big budget, but we spent a big chunk of it in digital. And the first digital ad ran in 1995. So literally 4 years after that.
Is
And
it on Yahoo?
we was on Yahoo. We
I don't know, I'm
Oh
going
no,
back
it
to
was
my
Yahoo.
mind.
We did Yahoo.
Yeah.
Remember MySpace? There was like we were
Yeah,
there,
yeah, of
but we also
course.
created like we created interactivity on digital. There's the ones in addition to like we had people be able to make their own music. That's back when electronica was big, where people
Oh,
were
yeah, that's
so
cool.
we let people create their own electronic soundtrack for their car. But we
Very
also
clever.
ran television ads. We went backwards in time and ran live TV ads the way they did in the 50s and 60s,
Oh,
but we had a spokesperson on that cut through like at this 20 seconds into the ad and was like, hey, everybody, what should Susie do next? It was like, go to www.focus247.com
oh,
and tell
wow.
us what should be the ending. It chose and then
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
commercial break, we would act out a different ending. So it was literally improv. And then we would give
Oh,
credit to
fun.
Susie from Lancaster, Michigan, who typed in so we connected the digital and the
Yeah,
analog
so it's
worlds in
integrated,
advertising.
yeah.
Yeah, that was the beginning. And then to be able to show what kind of impact that had in terms of engagement because of the digital aspect and getting that data back, that was everything. So I am big on encouraging, again, that data orientation, that STEM background for all marketers. If you and I had a conversation, I get teased like, well, marketing's not STEM. I'm like, then I don't think you've been paying attention to marketing
Yeah,
lately,
right.
right? It is.
Right, it's like, oh, it's this exciting and attractive
Yeah.
creative field, and my background's creative.
Yeah.
So I say, yeah, that's great, but also, I mean, I have 2 MBAs and 1 in CIS
So smart, right? It's everything, right?
you
Why you're
can't just
successful.
be creative in marketing.
You have to apply
You have to have both
the
sides.
yin yang, right? You got to
Right,
have both sides of it. But I think that in terms of getting into automotive, I
yeah,
think that's your door. And don't be afraid to go into sales and like be able to show the organization who's sales oriented that you can go and use your skills to actually help dealers sell more cars. I mean, you got to be willing to get your hands dirty and kind of not just live in the sales organization, but build your resume in those companies by setting yourself up in other components of the business that actually marketing has to understand to be able to support and be successful for.
No, you're absolutely right. I love that you talk about this because there's a lot of young women, that I've been in my audience as a speaker, I've mentored, and
Yeah.
they kind of go deer in the headlights when I talk about data. And I think it's just so important
Yeah.
that we start to educate them. So let's talk about that a little bit. So what are you doing today in supporting other women, supporting young women, uplifting women? And, we talked pre-show a little bit about,
Yeah.
I got excited just talking to you on the phone about, and I kind of heard that fire in you, that you are doing things and you really do care about young women and their development in STEM. So, and any women's organizations you're involved with at the company, talk about that a little bit, what
Yeah.
you're doing to
Well,
uplift.
we do have a women's, and most companies do, right? They have, women's organizations here designed to support women in the company, especially in traditionally male dominated companies. So, my first experience was at Ford with a women's organization, a subgroup within the organization, carried on to Chrysler and to all the companies after that. I speak at women's organized company organizations around the world, as well as people are looking for speakers from outsiders. So I've done it for the Wall Street Journal. I've done it for different packaged goods companies. It's important to be able to share, just like this platform, marketers with different backgrounds, women in
Yes.
marketing with different backgrounds, sharing it with people in other industries so that they can hear about it. It's important for women to not only feel that they're valued within the organization they're in, but to be able to see what happens elsewhere, again, for that idea of best practices, but also for their own personal development of like, gosh, might I want to go do that? What does it take to do that? And I feel like as women in sometimes male dominated organizations, this one tends to be, although our CEO is a woman. I think I'd like to share that because she's a friend of mine.
Oh,
She was with
please.
me.
Yeah.
We worked together at Ford. We worked together at Chrysler. I've worked with her at several other companies along my trajectory as well. And she's our CEO here, and she is the epitome of a warrior. Her name is Ann Fandozzi. But um,
Yes.
I love the fact that like she's a woman who has come in and been CEO of very industrial traditionally male dominated industries, and comes in like a beast and just crushes it, and she brings the best talent with her. Not all of us are women, there's a few of us, but it's all about helping to create opportunities and to showcase that. And so here, even at this organization, supporting other women and giving them, I think it's just even the visibility of it to let them know that that's
Yeah.
because I think so often,
That's a big one, right?
when Mary Barra became CEO of GM, like
It's so funny. It's like, oh my God, Mary Barra. I read everything. To me, she's such an amazing story. So go ahead. Yeah.
no, but we think about these traditional, like
She's one of my role models. So when you brought her up, I was like, yeah, no brainer.
the first woman, right? I mean, it's like you need people to break that down so that other women know that it's possible. And so, look, it's a pride point for me to be able to continue to work for such a great woman who I love personally, but also I think just what it means and what it symbolizes to so many other women. There's a lot of Look, I don't mean, there's a lot of women in marketing, but there's not necessarily a lot of women in marketing in these kinds of industries. And so we still have a ways to go. So to your point, in addition to trying to speak and support women through these other organizations that are set up within companies, these affinity groups, et cetera, is I'm also big on just supporting young women. I have two boys, so we talked about, like, I don't like to screen out the men, and I
No,
have
yeah,
plenty
and
of
we
men
don't
who
do
work.
that.
It's not, it's not, it's not, it's not about that.
Yeah.
But they're 22 and 25. And so, I've spoken to some of their friends who are women and chatted with them and helped them in their careers.
Great.
Like friend Anne, she had a niece who was looking for an opportunity in marketing back when we weren't working together. And she sent her I'm like, give her to me. I'm going to help her. I'm going to set her up. I'm going to give her an
Oh,
internship.
that's
It's
great.
all about, for young women, it's about providing advice, providing mentorship, making sure they know the door's open to ask questions at any time. And also, I think with other women in our network is to be able to be a support for other women they're mentoring. And so in that example, I was like, bring her on. I'm going to give her an opportunity and help her because this is the path she wants. And I do the same for women that I'm mentoring who want to get into a finance track or a retail track. And I pass them off to somebody else in my field
Exactly.
to help.
Yes.
We've got to, it's not about us like one against the world. It's us as a group to be able to help to support one another. And I can tell you kind of when you were talking about the automotive days, I think Anne and I became so tight back then because there were few women who were engineers and backgrounds and in the marketing space, and she was actually more in the product development space. But it was even more rare back then to find women who supported other women, which was a real. And there were some. I don't want to mean there were some who were great supporters, but there were several who weren't, as if
Yeah.
only going to be so many women allowed, and therefore like
Right.
you gotta hold your space.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that has shifted. It's been a bit of a sea change, but I think it's important for us to continue to bolster that mentality and that kind of support, to know that look, there's plenty of room for all of us, and the more we help one another, the better off it is for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you brought that up because I've been getting into that more and more on the podcast. The more and more incredible women I'm lucky to have on the podcast that are leaders. I feel that the ones that really have achieved so much, it's because they are also so supportive of other leaders,
Yeah.
because the leaders can't do it alone,
Right.
And do you have any advice for leaders out there? I mean, most of my audience are female entrepreneurs looking to become leaders in their industries, or they're female executives that are venturing into a new business.
Yeah.
A lot of times they feel alone in those areas,
Yeah.
and they don't really know where to go to build this network. So any advice you want to share to aspiring female leaders on connecting with I mean, that's why I do this podcast.
Of
But
course.
this is just one thing. So
Well, but this kind of thing that you have, you also, I've been to all of your different pages on every social media platform, and you have a myriad of ways for women to connect with one another there. And I would just suggest that it's these kinds of platforms that are create an immediate network. I
yeah,
also like just look locally. So you were asking what other kinds of things I do. It's just so part of like my daily life. I have a good friend who lives in the town I live in Westport, Connecticut.
mm,
And she had a small business, actually a spin studio that I was dedicated to spinning. And then, of course, the pandemic came and she needed help. And I offered to come in to support her from some business acumen.
that's
She asked me to be on the board. I became an investor. Despite all of that, the city the city wouldn't, well, it was the city and the banks wouldn't provide lenience. It was a whole crazy story. She shut
yeah.
it down. But she went back and she got a certification. She went back to school, got the certification at Georgetown University in
Mm,
executive coaching. And she's like, but I don't know how to get started. What should I sat with her and helped her map out a marketing plan
yeah,
on the kinds of things to do. I was like, hey, do you know in this town there's a startup Westport, and it's all people who are entrepreneurs, men and women, but all entrepreneurs. There's a minority group in Westport that, again, all minorities, women, people of color that are business owners, I was like, you have to join that. So
yeah,
she joined that. Not only has she like gained camaraderie and doesn't feel alone, but she's found some business outlets because
yeah.
some of those people need executive coaching. So it's even just looking around you and supporting the women in your personal life that you have around you in your community, as well as in your business life that you connect to through, your LinkedIn and your conferences, and in your just the business, the company that you work for. There's so many ways when you open up and just offer yourself up there for, to help and be helped, by the way, at times. So,
Right.
it's
I mean, be
important we
helped.
ask for help.
Leaders need help. We
We
also need
do.
mentors.
Yeah,
I mean, I definitely have mentors,
of
and
course. Right. It's
no one has all the answers. So
No, it's a constant learning game, right? We're constantly learning and
yeah,
not being, it's humbling sometimes to ask for help, but it's also humanizing. And I do think, as you say, like, what is, how do you think about it? Just because you're an entrepreneur and you want to put on the face of like, I'm strong, I'm capable, I will succeed.
yeah.
And you say all those things, those mantras. But it's also
Yes, every morning.
every morning in the mirror, don't
Every
forget,
morning.
some days are harder than others.
Yeah.
But, to not be afraid to ask for help where you need it, to ask for advice, like that's the most, it shows a strength that I think some people don't realize.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of time, especially the entrepreneurs that are ladled with doing so many things, and then they kind of get in some type of repetitive day. A lot of time they don't think to ask for the help. They
Right.
think they got to bear all that on their shoulders. And
Yeah.
so I love that you talk about that. It's so, so important. I wish more people did it. I think there'd be more answers and solutions,
Right. Yeah,
you know.
we have it out there. I mean, I think about building a knowledge base at this company I am in where we can share best practices and you can layer
Yeah.
AI on it and ask questions. If we could create that for a women's organization where we could put in our learnings and our best practices and layer on an AI and that we could all lean into and be like, wait, or just for entrepreneurs, imagine how we could help one another to grow, and I just there's just so much room for that, and it's not about being competitive with one another. There's room
That
for all.
is, that's right. It's all about, yes, 100% cooperation,
Yeah.
I call it. And that, I mean, that's the whole point. I started Warrior Women in Business because of the earlier point that you made about the women who used to think there are only so many seats at the
For women.
board,
Hmm.
right? And that's why I started this, because I don't think that's the case, thank God, anymore.
Right.
But we still need to remind ourselves that it's not competition.
Right. We are
So
not each other's competition. Right.
no, but we need each other.
Yes,
So
that's
I
right.
love it. So I love that you brought that up. Okay. Let's talk about what excites you about being, I mean, it seems like a lot excites you, but about being
I'm easily excitable. Yes.
I am too. It's all good. So, so specifically about your new role,
Yeah. Oh,
what's going on? What's super
what's
exciting?
not exciting? I
Besides the
mean,
fact that you've been like flying all over the world.
yeah. It's
What?
exciting, meeting new colleagues around
Yeah.
the world and hearing about their business. Like for me, it's like going back to school. It's like being a sponge. You just sit there and I've
Mm,
got a notebook full of notes on what they're doing, and when you get in a room like the room I was just in, it's so inspiring. It's like the ideas you share and one builds on the other. I think it's always exciting. Look, it can be daunting for the organization when a new leadership team comes in the way that we have here and that I've done in so
yes.
many other
Sure.
places, because that means change, and change tends to be
It is
uncomfortable for
scary.
most people. And
Mhm.
if I find that those people who lean into change, like, okay, like what about change is exciting to them? What things are they worried about, but what things are they excited about? Because I think if you can tap into like, what kinds of things are those colleagues, do they wish had been different all along or had been kind of waiting for something to happen and it just didn't, or it didn't get a good reception? Like this is the opportunity to try it again, because with new leadership comes some different points of views. It doesn't always mean it's better, but it is different. And so if you can come in there and hear, I love hearing about these ideas and then bringing best practices that I've experienced from, my decades of work experience now that might be new to this industry, is really exciting. I mean, for us, we're a global company that kind of started, well, it started 23 years ago by two guys who left Siemens because they were tired of the corporate
Oh,
experience.
interesting.
And they started this company in their basement, and it went from 0 to over 2.5 billion in 20 years. And
Incredible
they
story
did it,
right there.
an incredible story. And they
That's
did
an
it,
incredible story. Yeah.
right. And they did it based
Yeah.
on being kind of the anti-company, on being, it's all based on our culture. It's based on our 10 values and beliefs that they created on a plane. And those values and beliefs
Mhm.
are the thing that has held this company together and has helped propel it to where it is. And what we're here to do now is not to undermine that or dismiss that, but instead to embrace that, and then to say, like, look, let's look into the essence of what these values and beliefs mean for our opportunities now. And now that we're global, how do we take this very decentralized format and how do we create more enablement tools? All those things you asked me about global marketing at the beginning. How do
Mhm.
we bring those to bear and still allow that essence of the culture to thrive? Not just to survive, but to truly thrive. And so, I love a challenge. But honestly, this is, I talk a lot about, I'm always asked to come in and kind of fix broken toys. It's not broken. So this for me is a gift to come into a company that, grows double digits every year.
Yeah.
Optimize.
Like,
I'm like, not having a revenue problem is a brand new thing for me. Maybe
yeah, that's pretty
SAT was
incredible
good,
to get
but
called into marketing and not have a revenue problem.
yeah, no, right. And not have to like be like, hey, so it's exciting because that part of the pressure is off, but there's
Yeah,
a lot of pressure to show value for like, hey, we got these new people. What's new? What's going to be different and try to show it's not different for different sake, but it's different because it's going to actually add value and help propel us to even greater heights.
yeah. Well, I gotta say, the company, that's an incredible story. I didn't know too much about the company. To be honest, I heard of it and I'm thinking, how do I know this company? Because I've been involved with like the CISO world
Yeah,
in the past.
right.
So that's maybe how I heard of it, but yeah.
Probably. Probably.
What
Well,
what a
you'll be
great
hearing
I
about
mean,
us more.
really a great story. It
We
really,
got more. We're going to be out there sharing stories and you'll be hearing more. So now you'll
yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about it. Okay, so besides your CEO, who I gotta send her a Warrior Woman trophy now.
Oh, yeah. If anybody
Um,
deserves it, it's her.
yeah. Um, what other role models, business or other female role models, when you were coming up, did you look at in your career? Any women that you want to kind of shout out to or
You know what?
story?
There were so many that were in like actually I was thinking about in Ford that as I was going up, I looked up and I was like, if they can do it, it opens a door for me. So there's too many to even in name. There was, eh, going through the both Ford and Chrysler. But you think about like big in the media. Do you remember Carly Fiorina at
I do.
HP? And
Of course I do.
she
I
was
worked at
vilified,
IBM, so I
of
know
course,
that
right? But she
track.
was so vilified, and
It's true,
so
right?
I so
I
admired.
haven't talked to about her in ages, so
Yeah, I so admired her. I read her book when it came out. I think she was given an unfair shake, but I just thought, here's a woman who worked really hard to get where she did. She made a little bit of a political run too.
that's
Um,
right.
but I really there's always aspects. It's not like I fully agree or and embrace, everything about all the women who come, but I think that there's so many women who've come before us who we can take bits and pieces from and just admire, if nothing else, the courage that it took for putting themselves out there, in a place like that, becoming a target where their male counterparts weren't, and who in similar situations were lauded rather than vilified. It for me, it kind of put a chip on my shoulder in many ways because it seems so unfair. And there's so many of those, and a lot of them within the political arena. We're seeing Harris running today, and it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there to be put under a microscope. And so
I
it is,
mean, that's the answer.
regardless of regardless of your politics, I tend to look at those women who've done brave things. It's easy it's easy to kind of run under the radar, but when you really reach for the stars, you put yourself out there for criticism. And it's how you handle that. I think I look for role
Absolutely.
models who I look for women who handle that well, um, whether they're successful or not. There's a personal integrity, and I think if you've been watching the Olympics, there's an Olympic ad that shows a little girl watching a soccer match, no, a track meet where
Mhm.
two of the runners fall, and one helps the other up even though they fell, and they're
Oh
competitors.
yeah.
How it translates to
And
her on
I and I
soccer
saw that. I'm
field.
like, I would totally do that.
Yeah, and her on the soccer field,
Because
and
yeah,
yeah,
we
girl
would,
picking up her
yeah,
opponent who fell. It's
yeah,
that it's being able to create an example that
yeah.
even if you're not successful, you didn't win the race, so no one's going to remember you for any of that. If they remember you for maybe falling, but picking not only yourself up, but somebody else who went down, with you. That's, there's something special in that I really admire because it's a journey, and we're all going to fall down at some point. And so it's easy to look at those who successful and be like, yes, but I like the journey of the story of what happened. In fact, I have a podcast too called The Conversational, where it's dedicated. I call it, hopefully I won't get bleep, but the holy shit moments in people's lives
Oh no, you can
and
swear.
what happens, like, what you do with that. So I lean into that because I think it's those moments that define us, and how
It
we
is.
use those to change our attitude and to keep our integrity intact, that propels us to the next level, that are worth celebrating.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. about the journey and the falling, because it's too easy to just admire success for the sake of admiring success.
Right.
To get there, well, however you determine success,
Yeah, that's
I think
right.
it's always a journey. And so, so I love that you talk about
Yeah.
that. And I think any women that have achieved success, whether they're on a board or they're running a gazillion-dollar company, they'll tell you how many times they've, like you said, fallen.
Yeah.
and and probably made the right decisions, but surrounded themselves with the right people, like you mentioned your
Yeah.
CEO does.
Yeah. And when you fall, it's not only picking yourself back up, but it's watching for those who reach out to help you stand back up.
Oh
That's the
gosh,
key,
yeah.
right? Because you'll find
Yes.
the ones that don't, but the ones that do, potentially at their own risk, those are the ones you want to pay attention to. Those are the people you want to surround yourself with. So that's kind of how I think about the journey, and I think about role models, is that it's what you do in the moments when the spotlight is on you for the reasons maybe you don't want, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And who
I
comes to stand by you in those moments?
Yeah. I mean, those are the people that you can lean on.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
So I mean, that's incredible. Okay. So my bonus, I know actually I have two bonus questions.
Oh boy.
So I ask all my guests this question, and you've already alluded to it about someone else in your company, but this is more general. So when you hear the term warrior women, and when I asked you to be on the podcast, I don't know how many times I asked you because I got so excited. What came to mind? What do you visualize when you hear the term warrior women in business as a global marketer?
Well, I mean, honestly, I thought about Wonder Woman, and your little Wonder Woman logo-y thing it doesn't help me not to see that. Um, but I do think about the women who have been in these male-dominated industries and who have succeeded. I mean, for me, that's just the personal side of it. But um, you mentioned those who are in the military. I'm a big fan of supporting the military. We hire specifically from the veteran pool here to join us.
That's great.
Same with previous companies.
That's
It
really
was a
great.
big marketing focus for us for talent acquisition to reach out to that group because they're so well trained, they have so much discipline, and frankly, they deserve opportunities like nobody else.
I
So
completely.
reaching out and providing those opportunities is a win around the world as far as I'm concerned. So I do think of it in both spectrums, and to your point, we've alluded to it before, but I think it is those who succeed in the most challenging arenas. Um, Sports. I think about these athletes. I think about the women's soccer team. Again, I thinking a lot about Olympics since it's going on and the work they did to, stand up for themselves, to, to start to get more equal pay. I think about those who in gymnastics who spoke out against, some of the horrific things that were happening to them, which was a super brave thing. And to prevent it from happening, really to no great benefit of their own, but to make sure that it didn't happen to others. And that for me is a warrior, um woman in the true definition of the word.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never thought about that piece, but that's really true. It's almost these selfless acts
Yep.
for future people,
Yeah.
future women. And yeah, there's a lot going on in the gender space right now. And
Mhm.
it's, sometimes can get confusing, you know.
Right. Right.
It
Right.
gets
And it's
confusing. It's like, well, where do I stand on this? And what should I say? And everything is sensitive. And, so it's about, I think what you're saying is like really knowing, you're human, the
yeah.
importance of being human and doing the right things, right?
And sometimes it takes, so you got to be the first. And again, our generation becomes the foundation on which the next builds, and so on and so on and so on. We're standing on others' shoulders, and I feel like there is a responsibility that we have when we enjoy some modicum of success to help establish that and lift the next group up.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm starting to think of, when I was on Madison Avenue, some of my bosses were women, and I never thought back then anything about it, But now I think back and I think, wow, there was one female boss on the floor and all else were men, and it must have been really tough for them.
Right.
owing them, owing them my career and really moving that forward. So I
Right.
think.
I feel the same for the women who came before me, no doubt.
Okay, so another bonus question I have is about resources on books, podcasts, besides ours and yours,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that you think women, and because you talked about STEM, that's why I'm asking you this bonus,
Yeah.
particularly
Yeah.
books, courses. You mentioned the Digital Marketing
Yeah.
Academy, um, podcasts around women really understanding the data side of marketing, STEM. Anything that you want to
Yeah.
mention?
Yeah. I mean, there's not any specific one. Look, I surf, several different periodicals. It's a shout out to a male colleague of mine who has a somewhat, gender neutral name. His name's Shelley Palmer.
Oh, Shelley, I've known
Shelley-
Shelley for 15 years.
I've known
True.
Shelley for longer than that. Shelley and I go way, way back.
Yeah, I like
Shelley.
he's super. Yeah, his newsletter. Oh my God.
Have you exactly? I love
Oh
his
my God.
newsletter.
It's like the Bible.
Right. And I've taken these little mini free courses that he offers. Of course, I've
Yeah.
brought him into companies to help him consult as well. But,
Yeah.
you know, I love I don't care what the gender is, of specifically that are making you smarter on a daily basis of what's happening in the world of STEM. And in particular in our industry, he focuses on the digital ad industry more or less. And
Yes.
obviously so much attention being paid to AI and so much is changing all the time. I just love reading his stuff. So, that's the one I'd give a shout out to because it's
Yeah,
the
I
one
do
I
too. It's one of
probably
the only newsletters I don't unsubscribe.
I,
There you go, Shelley. I will
it's
never
saying
unsubscribe
something.
from your newsletter.
Right. Exactly. And that's saying something because we get a lot of those. So which ones have you kept and actually open,
And
versus
actually read all the way
right,
till the end
right,
and
right,
share with others.
right.
Yeah, I don't need, it's funny that you bring him up because sometimes I think, how does he keep up with this? Like it's,
He's got a great team and he's got really smart kids who are
oh,
participating in his business too.
really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's got a great
it's
team.
tremendous. It's tremendous content. So
Yeah. Yeah.
kudos to
That's the one.
Okay, so one last question.
Okay.
Uh, first of all, thank you so much. You've shared a lot of great advice. I think that, that's what this podcast is for. But we both would like to see women in marketing and in STEM develop. So the advice is
Sure.
very, very helpful. How can women reach out to you, learn more about you, learn more about your company?
Yeah.
What would you suggest?
So, I mean, look, I would say our website probably doesn't do justice, and we'll be changing that to what we do. But we'd welcome anybody to, or you go to convergint.com. But I have my own website, so if you wanted to hear, my website has my podcast. It's julierame.com. And I get no value. There's no advertising. I make no money from it. So this is where it hosts, as well as you could go to Apple Podcast and the other podcast platforms, and listen to podcasts from a lot of women, but some men as well. Shelley actually is one of my guests,
We'll listen to
talking
his.
about their journey. And it talks about like from they were a kid and their family life and the trials and tribulations they had to lead them where they are. And again, if you're looking for inspirational stories to, fill a commute somewhere, go pick one of those. I pride myself on the quality, not necessarily the quantity of those. And in terms of how to get in touch with me, I mean, you can go to LinkedIn. My personal email I'm happy to give it out, is rame.julie@gmail. I can
We'll
unsubscribe to
put that
that.
in the show notes.
But
Anything you want to give. Yeah.
yeah, and LinkedIn is fine too. I go through those, not every minute of every day, but I go through them probably at least once a week. So if somebody wants to reach out there, I'm happy to connect with them that way too.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Any other remarks? Any other comments?
No, my only comment would be, first of all, to thank you for having me, and just to applaud you for the work you're doing here and the cause that you're so passionate about, not only to support women, but women in the military, veterans, as well, and just your bit upfront about supporting them. And I think we can do more to support one another. And so I've liked and shared and will continue to do so. And I just would encourage all those viewing to do the same. So that's how we actually get around and support one another. It's
I
an easy
really
thing to do. It doesn't cost you a thing.
It doesn't cost you. I really appreciate it, Julie. It doesn't cost a thing, and I'm
Right.
glad, I mean, you're a smart woman. So we understand that that's what it's about. It's really just simply supporting what each other is doing.
Being there. Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay, wonderful. Well, in the show notes, I'll put all of your links as well. And I'd love to continue the conversation, you know.
Of course.
Yeah. And this is just a great start for the women that I'm constantly interviewing women, and I think they need to hear this, not just from me, but from you. Some of the things that they need to think about when they want to get into careers in marketing, what it really looks like, and how they can start to bridge that and build that. So I really applaud you for all the resources and advice you gave today.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, truly.
You're welcome. Okay, so this is Jasmine Sandler. I'm going to be signing off from Warrior Women in Business podcast 61. I do want to mention some really important things, as you all know, that I always have coming up. So I am like so ecstatic. I mean, Julie's amazing. I don't know if you play hockey, but I've been playing hockey my whole life.
Oh, wow.
And my next podcast guest is Kim Davis, the Senior VP of Multicultural Audience Development at the NHL. Super excited. She's on the podcast next week. And we're going to talk about all that. Oh my God, Juliana, if you don't know her, she's like, I read her bio, I was like, oh my Lord.
I haven't met her. I know Gary Bettman, the commissioner from back in my advertising days, but I'm so thrilled to hear that he has a woman running this on it. Like, great. So I will tune in for that.
Yeah, tune in. So it's same date next week, and we're gonna really because my background is I work for the Panthers, I work for the Lightning.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get into what's happening at the NHL right now in terms of multicultural audience development and how that works, how she got into that. She's fairly new in the position, and her background's crazy. So she's coming on, and then the week after that, I have the CEO of New York City Tourism Board.
Ooh.
Yeah, she's very cool woman. Yeah, and we're going to be talking about, there's a lot that's happening right now in New York City tourism. So I don't even know where that's going to go, but as like a New York for the last 25 years, I've seen tourism change so much.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait to see what's on the horizon. So anyway, there's a lot, and I have events coming up. So anyway, there's a lot going on with Warrior Women in Business. I encourage you all to tune in. This episode will be edited and shared in the next couple of days. Everybody will get an email. I want to thank Julie again. And again, we'll be putting in her contact information and her company's contact information. I didn't even remark on the fact how important security is these days.
Mm-hmm.
Cybersecurity, physical security. It's
right.
Security is so important these days on every level. So I encourage you to check out Convergint, especially for those women in business that are leading companies and have employees around the world, and they need to keep things secure. So with that being said, signing off from episode 61, and I look forward to meeting you all at the next event and having you all on our next podcast guest. So with that, signing off. Thanks, everybody. And thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful evening.
Too. Bye.
Bye.
I am a warrior woman, watch me fly. Put on your cape.